Hello, everyone. Welcome to a quick, 30-minute talk on why it's okay to not be okay. Um, my name's Pete Rawlinson, and I run Life Shift Coaching, it's a life coaching company. And we deal primarily with how the human mind works for everyone. Um, and we'll go into a little bit of detail today on that. Um, but at the core of what I want to talk about today is this feeling that most of us tend to have a lot of the time where we just we may not feel totally sad or totally happy. We're just not feeling okay. There's something that's kind of missing, or kind of this feeling of dissatisfaction, and we all experience it at times. And I want to kind of start out by saying that not feeling okay is normal. It's part of the way humans work. um, so in that respect, and I know people do feel like this sometimes, they feel like they're kind of broken, or there's something wrong with them because they feel like this, with sometimes there doesn't seem to be a reason why, or there is a reason why they can't break out of it. We're going to talk over the next 30 minutes or so about the nature of mind, of your mind, of my mind, of a greater mind that connects everyone. We'll go into understanding how it works and how you can be comfortable with that feeling of not being okay. Because as the title of this session says, it is okay to not be okay. In fact, I would argue it's actually part of our experience of being human beings. So let's crack on, and then we'll get some questions towards the end of the session. So, what do we mean by not being okay? It's a kind of a feeling that we have, right? This feeling that there's something missing, especially when we've lived a decent portion of our lives where we've done things that we wanted to do, achieve things we wanted to achieve, and still have this feeling, this empty feeling inside. Um, Everybody feels like this, but where does it come from? How does it manifest itself? How does this feeling feel? Does it feel physical? Is it a feeling in your stomach, or in your head, or in your shoulders? Or we feel kind of tense, right? And then also the way that we interact with other people when this feeling of dissatisfaction gets a little bit more intense, we tend to take it out on other people, sometimes without even knowing it, right? We'll get angry, or frustrated. Or so where does it come from? Do you have a voice inside your head that's always talking to you? I do. And it talks a lot. And very often it talks about kind of negative things, right? It talks about, I don't know, maybe regrets of the past, or what ifs for the future, right? And especially those what ifs for the future, your mind can think up the most ridiculous scenarios to kind of panic you, right? And those what if scenarios can turn into quite intense feelings, and that is, again, totally normal. And we'll go on in a little bit to talk about why the brain does that, why the mind does that, and why it's doing it from a very positive place. Okay. So, but one thing that is key to what I'm going to talk about is those voices in your head feel very real. They feel very personal, but you don't have to believe them. Now, that sounds very easy to say, but we do, as human beings, tend to hold on to some of these voices and what they say, and tend to believe them, and that makes them stick. And I'll talk about a couple of analogies there that will help us understand the dynamics of that. So, yeah, not being okay is something that every single human being, despite the fact that you may see, other people that tend to just be getting on with life and always be happy. I guarantee you that inside they sometimes have this feeling of not being okay, and sometimes that can be pretty intense. So let's talk about how that gets generated, right? Every emotion that we have, every feeling that we experience comes from a thought. Now, that thought may not be, you may not be consciously aware of that thought, right? Very often thoughts just come into your mind without your volition at all. And those thoughts are manifested as feelings. Now, there could be really good feelings of being really happy and elated, but more often than not, there are feelings of dissatisfaction and oftentimes even worse, right? There can be feelings of genuine sadness or anger or jealousy or whatever. I guarantee you, every one of those emotions is coming from a thought. Those feelings then lead to behaviors, right? And I'll talk about a couple of examples of where that's definitely worked. That's definitely happened for me, right? But thoughts lead to feelings, lead to behaviors, and quite often those behaviors, those negative behaviors, like being angry with someone, can then lead to another negative thought, like guilt, for example, which then creates other feelings, and it can become a vicious cycle. Now, if this continues, especially for a very powerful thought leading to a very powerful feeling, if this continues, uh, we tend to get trapped in a spiral. And then we almost start to identify ourselves with this spiral. And that's where people say, I am an anxious person. I'm a depressed person. I'm worthless. I'm not good enough. These are all fictitious programs generated by the mind through this cycle. And it is possible to break this cycle. It is not possible to stop thoughts. We can't stop thoughts. It's part of who we are. And I'll talk later about why that's actually really important to not stop thoughts. But you don't have to get caught in this spiral of thoughts to feelings to behaviors all the time. And I'll go into some detail about what that means. But so where do the thoughts come from? Where do they come from? Because as we've said, a lot of the time they're not thoughts that we would consciously have, right? Well, there are two types of thoughts that people have. One is kind of consciously created thoughts, right? So I want to make a cup of tea. That's a really useful thought. It gets you a cup of tea when you're happy. They account for about 5% of the thoughts that we have on a daily basis. The other 95% are unconscious thoughts. These are thoughts that your mind generates as a means to help you, as a means to protect you. So a lot of these thoughts are based either in the past or in the future. Very, very seldom are they based in the present moment. And we'll talk later about how the present moment is the only thing that's really real. The past has happened. It can't be changed. It doesn't exist anymore. The only experience we have of the past is a memory that we bring up in the present moment. Likewise for the future, obviously by definition, the future doesn't actually exist. What the future is a series of imagined scenarios that your mind generates in this present moment. So let's talk about the anxiety that's produced by these what if things that come up, right? You could be in the shower. I could be in the shower in the morning and come up with 5 or 6 different scenarios for the day that would completely take me off kilter and be feeling negative for the rest of the day, right? Anything. What if the car doesn't start when I get out? I've got to repair the car. That's going to cost a fortune. Blah, blah, blah. We all know what these voices are, right? What happens is the brain, the mind, is thinking up these what if scenarios in an effort to protect you. And that comes from way, way back when we were kind of living in caves, right? Which actually wasn't so long ago, where the mind had to come up with scenarios to maintain your physical safety, right? Maintain your ability to survive, to eat, to have shelter, right? So it had to think about, well, what if there's a saber-toothed tiger in the bushes when you go out and hunt for your bison? You better be very well aware of the rustling in the bushes, right? So it's thinking about these what if scenarios so that you can go out there armed and ready to deal with an attacker. That's absolutely necessary. But what's happened with the human race over the past few thousand years is that society has evolved far quicker than the human mind can adapt to it. So that saber-toothed tiger rustling in the bushes is actually now equated to more kind of psychological problems like I have an email from the boss asking to meet me at 9 a.m. tomorrow, right? Straight away, your mind is like, I am going to get fired tomorrow. And then it will spiral right into not only am I going to get fired, but then I will lose my job, I will lose my family, and I will be destitute on the streets. I know that thought process can happen to me in 5 seconds. It's your mind thinking and reacting exactly the same way as if there is an animal ready to kill you. That's the way it works. What I'm trying to get across here is that these thoughts that come in, A, they are there for a very positive reason, right? They are there to help you, to protect you. And B, 95% of them are completely false illusions that you don't need to believe. Now, you can't really stop these thoughts because it's just an automatic result of all of the conditioning and experiences that we've had through our lives, nor should we try and stop them. But we can ignore them. And that's what I'll talk about in a second. So that's, I just want to get across in terms of like where we've come from as a human race. This is the scenario that goes on in our heads all the time, and understanding the way that the mind works can really help us take the next step, which is to try to kind of manage this, right? So I'm going to give you a couple of analogies that I've used in the past, which are really useful. Do you ever remember when you were a kid, or if you have kids, you would have one of these bubble machines, right? You plug it in, you put some detergent in there, this little wheel would go around and it would generate thousands and thousands of bubbles. You put them in the garden and then you'd watch these bubbles go around, right? It's fun. Um, Now imagine if that bubble machine was your mind and the bubbles that it was creating were your thoughts. It's almost exactly the same thing in that bubbles are designed, their nature is to come out of the bubble machine and float off into the air and then eventually pop and disappear. And that's what bubbles do. And that's what thoughts are designed to do. These unconscious thoughts, that's what they're designed to do. But, and for most of them, we just let them go by. But there are some of them that we don't, right? There are some of them, especially the negatively charged ones, that we don't let them go and we hold on to them. What happens when you hold on to a bubble from the bubble machine is it gets bigger, much bigger than it should. Not only does it get bigger, but it starts to spawn other bubbles, right? Like the analogy of the email from the boss, right? Taking you down this path of destitution in seconds, right? It's building these other bubbles and you hold on to it. Bubbles were never meant to be held on to. They were meant to be observed, have fun, and fly away. That's their nature. And it's the same thing with our unconscious thoughts. Almost all of those bubbles should just go away. Another analogy is kind of like a movie, right? Imagine that you're tasked with creating a movie, and you're the you're the script writer. You write the script. You're the director. You direct it, and you're the editor. So you edit it too, right? And you create this movie, and it's a lovely movie. Let's say about going to the zoo or something like that, right? Um, and then you pass it on to the special effects department because it needs to have a little bit more drama in it, right? Special effects department come in, do some work on it, and create this scenario where when you go to the zoo, you go to stroke a lion and it bites your hand and your fingers are bitten off. Terrible, awful, awful scenario. What was a really nice movie now turns into a nightmare scenario that you never anticipated. You're not the special effects department. Somebody else has done that to your movie. Okay. Not only are you the director of this movie and creator of this movie, you are also in the audience watching it too. And when you watch this movie in the audience, it generates all kinds of negative feelings, right? Well, there's a couple of very distinct truths about that scenario, right? First of all, it is your movie. You don't have to give it over to the special effects department. You can create whatever movie you want to. It's your world. And secondly, you're in the audience there, but there's an exit door in that room, and you can walk away from that movie at any time because it's just a movie. It's not real. This is the way the human mind works. It constantly plays movies to you. And for the most part, we all tend to feel like that movie is kind of a real thing. And it's a movie that's played by somebody else. And more often than not, we are the creators of those movies. We are the audience in those movies, and we can leave that movie playing, and there's no consequence. Well, there is one. You'll feel better. You'll go outside of the movie theater into the sun, forget about that awful scenario at the zoo, and just move on. That is truly the way that the human mind works. So this is what kind of the crux of what I really want to get across today is this concept of outside in thinking. Let me explain a little bit about what I mean here, because this is really core to understanding how all of our minds work. Um, Everything we experience in our lives, we experience inside of us. When we look at something, when we look at a table or a chair or a tree or the sun, um, we don't see it as it really is. We take inputs from our environment and then we play it back to ourselves, rather like a movie, within our own minds. Okay. Um, in that respect, we kind of live in a world that's inside of us, but it is impacted by what is outside of us, right? Um, most of the time when we most of the time when we feel bad about something, we kind of feel like, well, that was something on the outside world made that happen. Therefore, I feel or I think this way. That's not actually true. That's what I would call the outside in way of looking at the world. That's not the way that it really works. It's not the outside world that's causing us to feel the way that we feel. It's our reaction to the outside world that causes us to feel the way we feel. And the way we feel is very unique to each one of us. Let me give you another analogy. Say you're walking down a path with a friend, and it's a tree-lined path, right? It's a path that you've walked down many, many times before. It's near where you live, and you're having a great conversation, and you're looking at the trees, and for the most part, you don't register a tree in the same way that a thought bubble will go past you. That tree will just go past, and you will think about it, just a tree. And then your friend that's walking with you feeling the same way. They're just trees, right? Until one tree, you get to one tree. And this was a tree where about a year ago, your 3-year-old son tried to climb up that tree and fell, broke his leg. That is not the same tree as the other trees you walk past. It's also not the same tree that your friend is experiencing. Your friend is just seeing that tree like another bubble going past. You are walking past that tree and it's causing you to bring up memories and feelings that are not good. So you may look away from that tree. You may not want to walk past that tree anymore. It's very different. Why? Because you've experienced something inside that makes that object you're looking at outside different from the way your friend is. That is proof in itself that the way we experience the world is not just about those outside things. It's about our feelings towards those outside things. That is true for a tree, and it is true for every single thing that we experience, including emails from our boss, conversations on the street with our friends, the way we feel inside. It's all about our feelings inside. And that's really, really important. Let me give you another analogy, and this is one more personal to me, but I live in Riverstick, not far from here, and I in the past I've kind of liked to drive relatively quickly, not way over the speed limit, but at least at the speed limit. And the road that I drive on very often now is quite rural, and there are very often slow drivers in front of me. And as soon as in the past, not so much now, still to a certain extent, as soon as I come up to a slow car, straight away I would get frustrated. Now, that would come from a thought, right? And quite often an unreasonable thought. So that unreasonable thought would go like this. There is a slow driver in front of me. They are causing me to feel frustrated, because I'm in a rush to get somewhere. Or sometimes I'm not even in a rush. I just don't like the fact that they're going slow. The next thought, the next spiral bubble that we generated is they're doing it on purpose. They've seen that I've come up kind of quite quickly behind them, so they've slowed down even more. And now they're doing it purposefully to annoy me. That's generating feelings of frustration, feelings of anger, and then that results in a behavior that maybe, well, I'm going to try and move out to the right a little bit just to give them a hint that I'd like to overtake them, although on that road it's impossible to overtake, but it'll put a bit more pressure on them, possibly to speed up, because that's what will make me feel better. That's unreasonable, right? It's also dangerous. And I'm getting frustrated over something that is really nothing to do with the person in front of me. Quite often, actually, the person in front of me might be, an elderly person that is really scared of driving on the road, made worse now by the fact that this driver behind them are causing them even more pressure and making them feel bad. This is a totally unreasonable situation, right? Now, I've worked on this and I've worked on when this happens, start thinking, you know what? This is not the person in front of me causing it. This is the way I am thinking about the person in front of me that's causing it. And even just that realization, you kind of start to step back. Now, I'm by no means perfect at this yet, but I know now when I go to a slow car, I don't go quickly to them. Something kicks in for me to think, hang on, um, this is nothing to do with the person in front of me and all to do with the way I feel about the person in front of me. Remember that our experiences are filtered by who we are inside, and who we are inside is an accumulation of every experience that we've ever had. Now, that's quite a few experiences, right? So in that respect, every single one of us are unique, more unique than a fingerprint. I'd say even more, I'd say unique in the same way that a little weather system is unique, right? Two weather systems can never ever be the same. The permutations of different activities going on in there can never in a trillion times ever be the same. And they're always changing and they're always dynamic as well, right? That's the same for every human being. So every one of us experiences the world very differently. That's why when you try and compare yourself to others, or you have a disagreement and you just don't understand why you don't agree with this person, that's totally understandable because we are completely unique. So that's kind of like an interesting, like an important way of looking at the world, because this is the way that we experience the world. So when we get frustrated about things that are going on outside in our world, and that this person is causing me to feel like this, or my circumstances are causing me to feel like this, please know that it is not the situation that is causing you to feel the way you feel. The situation is generating thoughts. Some of them are not your fault, but they are thoughts that come into your head that generate these feelings of dissatisfaction, not being okay, or even worse. And the fact is that because it's generated by thoughts, the fact that you can observe these bubbles and have some control over what you decide to hold on to and not, you can reduce this. You can get to a point where being okay is okay. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that next. Okay. So another analogy, and this is an important one. No matter how you feel, no matter what the outside world has done or could do to cause you any kind of negativity, know this is that none of us are broken or damaged in any way. Okay, we have this innate well-being. I kind of compare it to like a diamond, right? You have a diamond inside. Every one of us is born perfect. I mean, think about little kids, right? They don't get stressed, right? They may get upset about something, and then as you've probably seen, that within 10 seconds of getting upset and crying, they're totally fine again. It's moved on. They've totally moved on. The bubble has gone past. They've experienced it and it's moved on, which is what it was meant to do. But as we grow older, we start to develop identities for ourselves. We start to kind of learn programs from our parents or from teachers and from friends that starts to obscure this innate kind of well-being that we have. and can make us feel like we're not as complete as we should be. The fact is, this diamond is always there, like the sun is always in the sky. It just gets obscured by clouds or obscured by stuff that's covering the diamond. It's still inside every one of us. I guarantee you, and I'll talk about an analogy in a second um, about how we can see this for ourselves. But um, what is this kind of diamond, right? Well, we'll talk a bit later about what you're able to achieve in life when you really see what this is. And we do get glimpses of this diamond, right? It comes through when, maybe we see like a sunset that takes our breath away, or maybe a piece of art or music that we just kind of lose ourselves in it. That is glimpses of this diamond coming through. We all know that we have it, right? Um, Not only that, but this diamond is part of a broader kind of a broader wisdom that is part of nature. It amazes me that you can plant a an oak seed in the ground, and after a few years, you'd get an oak tree, and after a few hundred years, you'd get a massive oak tree. From that one seed comes a huge oak tree, right? How does that work? We don't really know how that works. But that's nature. That's just an innate evolution of nature. We have each of that. We have that inside of us as well. We have um, this innate kind of intelligence that's inside us that gets obscured by our egos, gets obscured by who we are. But it's still there, right? So I'm going to talk about this diamond and the way that it gets obscured, when it's mainly by thought, it's mainly by these thoughts that we have and the feelings that are generated from it gets obscured. And people can have these thoughts and feelings for years. They become completely identified with it and lose the diamond altogether. What we'll talk about now is how we can try to reduce some of that thought and start to see some of that diamond, because when you start to see it, and I've seen it with many of my clients, it's quite an amazing experience when you start to appreciate it. Um, let's just talk a little bit about physiology versus psychology, just to reinforce this concept of this innate wisdom, this innate condition that we all have inside, right? And we talk about nature and the oak tree, but if you cut your hand, you know that will heal, right? And it's the process by which this heals is actually quite amazing. We don't still fully understand how the body's intelligent enough to know, because there's no brain in your hand, right? Isn't thinking about doing this. But there is something. There is repairing the hand, right? Now, if you let that cut heal, it will heal almost back to pristine, right? Pristine. If you start to mess with it, if you start to pick at the scab, it won't. In fact, it may even get infected, but it'll certainly take longer to heal. Eventually it will, because ultimately that's its default state, is to be healed. But if you play around with it, it won't heal and it will take longer. Why should that be any difference for psychology as it is for physiology? You have this innate, undamaged psyche inside, which has been sometimes hurt, covered up, cut as your hand would be. If you just let it go, just as with the cut, it will return to its natural state. I call it kind of going to home base. It will return back to where it should be. But the fact is, most of us don't do this, right? We play around with it. We pick at the scab. And picking at the scab again, psychologically wise, is um, is thinking. It is unhealthy thinking, prevents a wound from being healed. I guarantee you, if you're able to manage the way you were thinking, it would heal, and you would start to uncover this innate default state that you have. And what happens when you start to uncover this, right? And I've seen this so many times. It's quite amazing. So here's a few examples here, right? But you still feel that sometimes not okay, but you're okay with it because you know that it's just thought. You know that it's outside in typically, and it's not real. When someone annoys you at work, It's not them, it's your reaction to them, and you can control that reaction. You can choose to let it go. Just literally watch the bubble go by. You'll also start to see kind of synchronicities start to develop in your life. And this is really true. It's kind of documented cases where this has happened many times, where when you start to let go of negative thinking, your um, your psyche has more room to see, more space to see the world as it really is. And the world is full of synchronicities. Things start to align more in your favor than they were before because you're not drowning in trying to maintain every negative thought that comes into your head. People see changes in you, more tolerant. My wife saw changes in me as a driver, which was really interesting. But generally, people that I know have experienced and gone through this tend to just not take life so seriously, not get so stressed about things. And I put on here all about all boats rise. There is a really amazing effect that it starts to have impact on other people that you know. Friends and family also start to be a little bit less stressed. That's not necessarily because you're talking to them or preaching to them about this. They just see it by example, and and uh, you start to kind of impact other people's lives, which is amazing. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the nature of mind, this outside in versus inside out, the fact that we're all totally unique, right? So let's talk about like what can you do to start to kind of minimize this sometimes powerful feeling of not being okay. Well, the way you do it is actually embarrassingly simple. It's not difficult at all. Part of it we've already discussed is just knowing this to be truth. This isn't a theory that I'm sharing with you. This is if you know anything about kind of different types of religion, there is this grounding of all religions really, which is that we are we are the managers of our own lives, of our own thoughts, right? So a few more analogies for you because I like to throw those in. But one is I keep by my desk at home, I keep a snow globe. And I kind of like to use this analogy of a snow globe is for the most part, a snow globe, when it's just sitting on the table, is designed to have the snow at the bottom of the globe, nice and quiet. So you could see the little snowman. But we don't do that, do we? We shake the snow globe. Sometimes we vigorously shake the snow globe and you can't see anything in there because it's completely just full of snow and it's obscured and you're just focusing on mist. What if you were able to, especially at times when you felt like your mind was racing? What if you just imagined a snow globe and just imagine just letting it rest, letting it go to where it should be? Just imagine it and you'd be surprised that you will just start to just calm a little bit. Sometimes when I get triggered when something happens, and that happens a lot, I'll just picture a snow globe and just try to relax into it. Same analogy with the speedometer there as well, right? Sometimes during the day, I'll check in on myself and say, where am I on the speedometer? Am I at 10 miles an hour? Am I at 200 miles an hour? If you think about that analogy uh, with a car going, a certain speed down a motorway, for example, if a car's going down a motorway at 200 miles an hour, well, first of all, that's dangerous, right? You can't really take in the journey, the scenery. You can't really think about anything else. You're just thinking about keeping the car on the road, and not crashing into anything, right? It's also dangerous for the car. You drive a car at 200 constantly, and you're going to see that engine light come on pretty soon. In fact, people who live their lives that fast all the time, and this is especially true in business that I've experienced, um, that they ignore the engine light, and eventually the car breaks down. And what is that? That's burnout. That's stress. It's depression. The human body actually puts you in bed and lays you down for a week, because you've completely burnt out the engine and it needs to recover. That's this innate wisdom saying, nope, that's enough. You got to stop. So again, when you've got a busy racing mind, certainly happens, For a lot of us at night before we go to bed and in the morning when we wake up, sometimes at 3 a.m., a racing mind, just try and picture where is your mind on the speedometer? See if you can just reduce it a little bit. If you're living your life at what, 20 miles an hour, that's okay. That's not dangerous. The car's fine with that. You're not completely focused on just staying alive on the road and you're taking in the journey too. And that's what life is all about. Not about desperately trying to survive at 200 miles an hour because the world demands it of you, because the outside world demands it of you. The outside world isn't demanding anything of you. You are demanding it of yourself because that's all there is. Staying on the road analogy, I know I'm overkeeling on cars here with the analogy, but those rumble strips you get on the road. Well, if you're driving down, down a road and maybe a motorway, and sometimes you kind of drift a little bit, right? Happens all the time. Just get defocused for a minute and you drift and you hit the rumble strips, right? And it's like, whoa, okay, I know I've gone too far off. I need to move back. In your psychology, the rumble strips are powerful emotions. Fear is a big one. Anxiety is another one, right? Where we kind of feel like, oh, something's happening to us. The outside world is being unfair to us. I'm putting too much pressure on myself. I blah, 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 blah. All that feeling is your body saying you've hit a rumble strip. Correct. And how do you correct? You correct by letting the snow globe settle down a little bit, letting the speedometer go down a little bit. Don't look on negative emotions as something that are necessarily there to make you feel bad. They're actually there to make you feel safe. So pay more attention to them, but don't fear them. And if you start to reduce your thinking when you feel like that, I'll guarantee you they will go away. And the final analogy is quite a simple one, but it's same as the diamond. It's kind of this sky and the clouds, right? It's like every one of us is is innately calm, right? Um, and we're all unique little weather systems, right? So staying on that weather analogy, when you look up at the sky and you see clouds going by, that's what they're designed to do, right? That's what weather is supposed to do. Clouds are supposed to go across the sky. Sometimes they obscure the sun and it goes dark. Sometimes it rains, as we know a lot here in Ireland. Sometimes there's a thunderstorm, but every single one goes by and eventually the sky is clear again. Now imagine if a thundercloud went by and you stood under it and you wanted to stay under it, you kept under it all the time. Well, then you'd get soaking wet, you'd get cold, you may get hit by lightning. And who wants that? But that's exactly what we tend to do when we experience these negative weather systems, right? Instead of just letting the weather just go by, which is what it was designed to do. Every one of those feelings that you have that you don't like, it's just a cloud going by. And if you let it go, I will guarantee you it will go. Same thing with the voice in your head we talked about at the top of the presentation. That voice is just trying to get attention, right? Most of it is nonsense. If you step out of it and watch it, it starts to lose its power. If you ignore it, not resist it, not try and stop it, but just let it go on, just like a very talkative friend. Just let them go on talking, not particularly listening to it. Then just like that talkative friend, they will stop talking eventually because they're not being listened to. There's no attention that you're giving to them. That's how it works. So I'm going to leave you with a few points here that are kind of important and maybe practical. And there's 5 points I want to leave you with. First of all, whatever you're going through, whether you're just not feeling okay or whether it's stronger than that, you are not alone and you are not broken. Just think about the hand analogy. You just need to heal. And that is absolutely true. Not being okay is part of the human journey. In fact, I'd argue it's actually the reason why we're here. The human experience is a roller coaster. It's not a flat line. If it was a flat line, it would be boring. If it was a flat line, we wouldn't be motivated to put people on the moon. And just like a roller coaster, there are ups and there are downs. And Those ups can feel very nice. And we can get addicted to those humps. Let them go by. Those dips can feel really tough sometimes. Let them go by too. Because just like the cloud analogy, they will go. They will. You think back into your life and situations that you've been through that have been really tough. And you've maybe thought at the time, in fact, you probably have, because I know I have thought at the time, I'm not going to get through this. And yet here we are, sitting in a presentation, listening to how the mind works. We did it, and we'll do it again. It's part of the human experience. Whenever you feel uneasy, whenever you feel dissatisfied, just know that it comes from thought. And just know that that thought creates the emotion that you're having. It is not the outside world that is creating your feelings. It is your reaction to them. Please, if you take anything away from this session, it's that. We live an inside out world, not an outside in world. I've worked with people who have overcome depression, anxiety, jealousy by just knowing that they can step back from their thoughts and be the watcher of their thoughts as opposed to being completely engaged in them. And then the final point is that there's not necessarily any tools or techniques that I'm going to give you to manage your thoughts, because if you start to manage your thoughts, if you start to push against them, if you start to suppress them, which is what most of us do, we just try to kind of fight them, and I don't want this feeling. I don't want to resist it. Um, well, Carl Jung, the famous psychologist, said, "What you resist persists," and that's very true. If you give it energy, it stays like anything in life. If you give it energy, it sticks around. If you remove energy from it, it just gets released, which is actually what it wants to do. So, no techniques, just the knowledge that you are not your thoughts and that you can step back from them. If you just let that sink in after this session, and if you need help, I'm here to help you as well, of course. But I've seen this happen to so many people where their lives have literally been transformed by this. The lives have been transformed by not having to be bogged down in negative thinking all the time. And then by revealing more elements of their diamond, they actually start to feel much more motivated about life. Some folks I've worked with have discovered new things they want to do with their lives. So it can be pretty significant. So I'm going to leave you with that. I hope this has been useful. If you have any questions, please contact me at newlifeshift.com. I'm here to help guide you through this. If you need help to do it, I love working with folks on making this happen, and I love working with businesses on making this happen because there's massive impacts to companies or whenever people work together as a group. But this is truth. This is how the human mind works, and we've always known it, but most of us have just forgotten it. And I hope this has been a reminder. Take care. Bye bye.